Learning topics. So let's see robotic control system. How exactly the robot control system is created, the things which are involved in that. The task robot control system contains. This is a system to execute the planned sequence of motions and forces in presence of the foreseen errors that the program that you have created for robot, it contains the control system programs. Why that control system is required? Now, to minimize the errors of the robot or to control the perfect motion and operation of the robot, we will be using the robot control system perfectly. Now, from where the errors arises, like inaccuracies of model of the robot hardware model that we have created, it contains the inaccuracies there, or tolerances in the workpieces, or we'll be having the static friction in the joint that we have created. Frictions are present there. Pneumatics is very downward, or we'll be having mechanical compliance in the linkages, or we'll be having electrical noises on the signals, and we're having some limitation in the precision of the computations. Because of that, the errors will arise. So to minimize these errors, we'll be having a perfect robot control system created. See, this is a robot control system, which is a general idea is there. Actually, not many blocks are present inside it, but general idea is like that. See, first thing is that it contains a feedback control loop. Feedback control loop means output is taken as input and again given as input there. So output and input is just like a loop created there. Feedback, output is taken and will be given to the input again, and the feedback is taken. Why feedback is taken? To check that the generated result is having any error or not, and accordingly that the algorithm will get modified and will control it. Okay, will perform the controlling operations, and then remodified algorithm will be used further. That's why the feedback control loop is created and output is connected to it. In between we have a sensors. The sensor check that whether the sensory operations are working perfectly or not. The sensor that we have used, they are perfectly working or not. That's why it's done there. So feedback control loop is created. With this, input output comparison is done, and will again readjust or remake, rechange the algorithm which is used to control the robotic counterparts there. Okay, so multiple ways are there which are used. So one thing which we have seen is the feedback control loop. So three things are there, three ways are there: open loop control, feedback control, and feed forward control, which are used to create the control system for the robots. Now in open loop control, we don't have the feedback. Okay, which is the basic control suitable for system with the simple loads. Tight speed control is not required. No position or rate of change sensors is there on axis. There's a fixed mechanical stop set point to the robot is called stop to stop, and pick and place systems are created. Means that they are given the threshold values for every direction. Threshold values are given. If it is going above threshold value, actually it will not cross the threshold value. Threshold value means, for example, speed of moving robot I'm keeping like 20 kilometer per second, something like that. Sorry, kilometer per hour, like that. So it will not cross that. These fixed things are mentioned over here. So the desired change in parameter is calculated, and actuator energy needed to achieve that change is determined, and based on that amount of energy is applied to the actuator. Means to move in the speed of 20 kmph, how much energy is required be calculated, only that much energy is given there. That is called as open loop control. Okay, this is modifiable. You can modify the program, you can change it, but automatically modification is not done. Remember, so if the model is correct and there are no disturbances, the desired change is achieved. Open loop. Second is feedback loop, which is shown in the diagram, which is very regularly used actually. It determines the rotor position or speed from one or more sensors. Position of robotic arm is monitored by position sensor. Power to actuator is altered so that the movement of the arm conforms to the desired path in terms of direction or the velocity. Okay, and here most important part in the feedback control is errors in the positioning are corrected. Means position is done perfectly or not. If some errors are there, perfect location is present there, adjustment is done. We'll check the output whether it's perfectly adjusted. If it is not given as input, again adjustment is done. In this way the feedback operations are done. And then we're having one more part as feed forward control. The third mechanism used in the robotic control system is this. It is a control where model is used to predict how much action to take and amount of energy to use. So that prediction model is available inside it. So they are using the previous movement, previous energy required for that movement, and based on that the predictions are done. Okay, based on the prediction, output is not directly given as input there. They're having one algorithm for predictive analytics, and based on that, you do the prediction. So, you used to predict actuator setting for processes where the feedback signals are delayed and processes where the dynamic effect of disturbances must be reduced. Feed forward. You are having your own heuristic approach in the algorithm, and then it checks what will be the next possible movement present there. That is the third way of robotic control present there. One more control is now available. It's called as adaptive control. Adaptive control. This uses the feedback to update the model of the process based on the result of previous action. And this terminology we call as a machine learning, adaptive control. Okay, it update it. Feedback is taken and update according to the result of previous action. The measurement of result of previous action are used to adapt the process model for the correct changes in the process and errors in the model. So errors will be reduced by this particular method. It correct for the errors in the model due to long-term variation in the environment, but it cannot correct the dynamic changes caused by the local disturbances. That is not dynamic. The on time changes, this is not possible. Maybe we call them as exceptions. That exceptions correction is not possible by adaptive control. So just like previous observations are used, and based on that you modify your current process, called as adaptive control. Now general classical paradigm which is used, like functional decomposition, horizontal functional decomposition, like that, we just do this: sense, plan, act. Okay, and again go to the start of it, again sense, again perform, app, plan, and then act, and remodify it, like this. This is what the classical paradigm for the same things are. This is what you call as horizontal functional decomposition. Okay, functions are decomposed. Whatever robot does, that robotic functions are decomposed in sensing, planning, and acting, but they are horizontally done. This method, okay, just the part of robotic control system, we have decomposed it. If you go some another level, which is just like that, this is vertical, sorry, it's written horizontally here, but it is vertical decomposition. Now vertical decomposition, every individual part we are decomposing it in the form of environment and sensing. See, so first we have perception, okay, then we have model. So whatever we have the things at between, like sensing or planning or acting, okay, so they are decomposed in multiple parts horizontally. They are also containing perception and modeling here in terms of first sensing, then planning, executing is present here, plan and execute. So before actually performing the action, act contains two parts: execution and motor control also. Execution is only not required, controlling our motor is also performed over here. It's called as a vertical decomposition, vertical functional decomposition. So the functions which are present in the robotic control will divide in that small parts, and based on that the control mechanism, control circuitry of your robot control system will be performing operations like that. Sense and actions are important. So based on that, we are having the sensors connected, environmental situations are sensed, and based on that the actions are generated above. Remember, one more environment that we generally called as reactive or behavior based environment. Reactive means there are some options, means some conditions that we have given. If that conditions are satisfied, based on that the actions are generated there. That's called as a reactive environment or behavior based environments also. Now see, here we have the reactive environment, reactive paradigms for the vertical decompositions, like many different actions that we can have in between also: building, exploring, wandering, and avoiding obstacles when actually the robot is moving at that direction. So we have to perform these all operations reactive. Now, so we can make use of multiple different architectures, any of the architecture present there, just like for robotic control system, as per the feasibility and as per the application area of robot, that architectures are chosen. Now we can have the hybrid architecture also, hybrid architectures. So many researchers have argued that neither a completely deliberative or completely reactive approach is suitable for building the agents, either the robotic agents which are actually performing operation in this robotic environment there. So they have suggested one hybrid architecture also, which attempt to marry classical and alternative approaches. I mean, they are connected together. Classical and alternative approaches are connected together. Okay, that is part of the hybrid architecture here. The obvious approach is to build agent out of the two subsystems, like deliberative approach and reactive approach. Both are combined. The deliberative approach, it contains a symbolic world model which develops plans, make decisions in the way that's proposed by symbolic AI. You might have heard about symbolic AI. Exactly the same symbolic AI is converted into the deliberative modeling. And in reactive modeling, when it's capable of reacting events without complex reasoning directly, means we have mentioned that condition, and reactions also mentioned that conditions are reached, will react onto it, and then robotic control applications are done. That is reactive mechanism. So deliberative and reactive both are combined together, and the hybrid architecture is formed. Okay, so remember that. So key problem in such architecture is that what kind of control framework to embed the agent subsystem into manage the interaction between various layers. So two layering methodologies are used here in the hybrid architecture. First is the horizontal layering, second is vertical layering. In horizontal layering, layers are each directly connected to the sensory input and action output. Okay, input and output. Every layer is connected over there. That is what we call a horizontal layer. In effect, each layer itself acts like an agent producing suggestion to what action to perform. That is what horizontal layering will do. And in case of vertical layering, sensory input and action outputs are each dealt with the at most of one layer each. Means one every layer will having that particular sensory input and the action generated with this called as vertical layering. And this we have combined into the hybrid architecture, something like this. Check this out. Okay. So here we are having the perceptual input and horizontal layering. So multiple layers are generated, created here. Output is generated. Okay. And in case of vertical layer, again, two options are there. One is one pass control and second is a two pass control. So here we are giving the input. Okay. Here we are providing the input. So this is what we have parallel kind of things are there. Parallelly, all layers will work in horizontal layering, and in vertical layering, we are giving one input and sequentially will perform operations. So two ways are the one pass and two pass control. In one pass control is just like we are having the half duplex communication. Sorry, simplex communication. Simplex and duplex. Simplex is in one direction only. Here output is generated. So in this case, we provide the input, we go through all the layers, and in the same direction, we'll be generating the output also. So just like a duplex kind of communication, this is simplest communication created on one direction. This is done in two way. First layer will pass to second layer, and second layer will pass to first layer also in this particular way. That is vertical layering with two pass control provided. This is how hybrid architecture is presented here. Now let's come with the middleware architecture. Robotic middleware is a middleware used in complex robot control systems, designed to manage the complexity and heterogeneity of the hardware and applications to promote integration of new technologies, simplify the software design, hide the complexity of low-level communication and sensor, heterogeneity of sensors, improving software quality, reuse robotic software infrastructure across multiple research efforts, and reduce the production cost also. It's also described as a software glue to make it easier for robot build focus on their specific problem area. See, when I'm creating a robot, I'm building a robot for specific applications. So three things are there. First thing input, second is output, and third is the control system. Now, control system we call as a middleware, and that middleware is dedicated for specific operation. For what operation we are creating the robot, okay, that depends. Okay, that by with the help of that the middlewares are created. Now some middleware projects are already available in the open source fashion also, that also you can use to build your own robot. Variety of projects for robotic middleware exist, but no one of these dominate. And in fact many robotic systems do not use any middleware, many are. But when dedicated robots are created, that time middleware products are actually required. Okay, why? Advantages we have seen that to gain that advantage, middleware projects are expected and required. They rely on a wide range of different standards, technologies, and approaches that make their use and interoperation difficult, and some developers may prefer to integrate their systems. Like examples which I mentioned here, these are the real world middleware projects present, like Player, RT middleware, Urbi, or Micro, Miro, Orca, OpenRDK, Rock. These are the common middlewares now available. Some of them are open source projects which we can use. The middleware is used to control the robotic application, but in the dedicated area, in that area only. And they are allowed to modify. The project which are open, so they are allowed to modify. So they already considered that how robotics system are functioning, but the prime application that we have to change, the core idea, core application inside the project that you need to change in the middleware. Okay, now when we connect all of them together, all of them together, then it forms a architecture which we call as the high level control architecture. High level control architecture, where we are connecting everything to the respective sensors there. What we have in the systems, we are having the physical sensors, we are having the physical actuators. Physical sensors are the input entity where it takes the data, and physical actuators are the entity which perform the actions based on the command generated, or based on the action generated by using the particular sensors there. In that, we are having the complete control activation mechanism which will perform operation of controlling the robots, making the operations available for us. The program which is written inside it by following the heuristic approach will be modified, and using that the high level control architecture is formed and it's created there. Now let's come with the last point of the first presentation, that is human and robot interface. How human and robot are interfacing together. So HRI, that we in short we call as. Okay, it's a study of interaction between human and robots. It is often referred as HRI by the researchers. Okay, it's a multidisciplinary field with contributions from human computer interaction, HCI, AI, artificial intelligence, robotics, natural language understanding, NLU, design, humanities, and social sciences. Now, if we want robot to be the part of human being, or we want to create the human as a robot, sorry, robot as a human being, so many things are required, which many things are involved in that. That's what we called as HRI, human robot interface here. Now, what things are involved in that? You just check it out. Main part, how human being actually get interacted. So three things are there by which you perform operation with real world entities. What is that? The first, you see. Okay, we see. So in order to make robot to see something, we require a camera. With the help of that, gesture recognitions are possible. Second, when again you have to interact with the robot, so we have to send some commands. Okay, you have to send some commands. So we require a microphone by which the sound recording is possible, sound capturing is possible, and we can recognize that by using a speech recognition engine here. Third, the command given by the robot to us that we can analyze. So we have to take that input, and that is done with the help of the third system that's called as speech synthesis, which will read or which will send the signal from the robot to the human being in the form of the sound, speech. So we require a loudspeaker, speaker like this. So these three entities are there by which it is possible to interact human and robot together. So internally, when the robot is considered, it contains a command instructor, okay, which robot will be having in control with. That command instructor will be used to convert the these entities, the camera, voice, and this voice, volume, whatever, speech, in the form of understandable, which is understandable by the robot only. So how robot will understand the things are present in that, how robot will understand the pictures present in front of the camera, how robot will understand my command, whether I'm giving some command and then I'm converting that in the form of its understandability. Okay, like natural language processing required there, natural language understanding or natural language processing. Natural language means language that we use to speak. That algorithms are required, and with the help of that will transfer, will convert that signal, that commands which is understood by the robot. Okay, so this is the common architecture required for the human robot interface. Three things are there, many more are possible, just like the sensor that we have seen, but generally we make use of a dedicated operation. Here we are considering robot is a human. Just consider an example of the Amazon's Alexa or Google Assistants. Okay, or okay, so Amazon Alexa, it's okay. They are actually speech engines. Assistants also one of the speech engine, but maybe somewhere we have to give input in the form of audio, video, or in the form of the images. So there we require the cameras. Okay, human robot interface there. Now, basically, when it was originated, in many Hollywood, Bollywood movies, you might have seen that one, and it was already used. But the origin of HRI as a discrete problem was started in by the end of 20th century, like author Isaac Asimov, which they have created. They proposed the first novel robot, okay, in the law of robotics, and using their concept, they have the Japanese company has created the first humanoid robot, Asimo, and based on the ideas proposed by the Isaac Asimov. The robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow human being to come to harm. A robot must obey the orders given by the human being except whether the orders will conflict with the first law. Okay, remember. And robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first law or second law, like that. That was stated by Isaac Asimov in 1941 when first idea of robotics was proposed. And at the end of 20th century, the robot, which are like humanoid robot concept, is initiated. Now almost every company in the world, including Google, Microsoft, IBM, they are creating their own idea of humanoid robots. With the help of that, the counterpart means the machine counterparts of human body is possible to create there. What are the goals of it? They are artificial agents with capabilities to perception and action in physical world, referred by researcher. Their use has been generalized in factories, but nowadays they tend to found in most technologically advanced societies also, like for rescue, military operations, they are present. With the advance in AI, focus on one part of the safest physical interaction, but socially correct interaction, that's also possible, depend of the cultural criteria also. Everywhere we have different cultures. And their goal is to build intuitive and easy communication with robot through speech, gestures, and facial expression, okay, that they require. Now, 7 advantages are there. I'll just take an overview of all step by step. Safety. Okay, we will make the thing more safe, more safety. Employees who work dangerous jobs will be thankful for robots to remove some of the risk there. Okay, safety. Second is speed. We have to perform operation with high speed. Okay, generally we can feel stressed if you are working more than 7 hours or 8 hours there, but we can get this task done from the uh, robot, so we can achieve the speed from that. Next is consistency in that. So robot never need to divide their attention between multitudes of the things, so they are consistent, they can be. Perfection. Robot will always deliver quality since they are programmed for precise repetitive motion. They less to make the mistake. That is what perfection can be achieved. Happier employees, obviously most of their tasks will be done by the robots, that's why happier employees. Job creations. Remember, robot don't take the job away, they merely change the job that exists. Okay, so robot need people for monitoring and supervision also, or programming also. That's why new jobs are created. Productivity. Robot can't manage everything. Some jobs absolutely need to be completed by human being only. Okay, where it will be acting connected, talking to the customer, answering to email, social media comments, like that will be done. Productivity will be increased. Okay, so this is the first part. Basic ideas about the robotics are there. How exactly uh, the common things about the robotics that we need to understand, we need to know, that we have covered. Now let's see how exactly we will be using the robots in practice. Means uh, the things which are theoretically known, theoretically identified, once they are deployed at actual in the real world, how they will perform the operation in practice, that we will see in the second part of the presentation. Just a minute. I'll share the presentations with you. Few topics I've taken somewhat faster because we're not having much time, but you can learn it afterwards also. So let's go with a new topic, robotics in practice. What it shows exactly how robots are used in day-to-day life. That is what the robotics in practice is. Let's see. Now, here the robot I have created. Check out the example, the diagram presented here. And the signal it will send, it will travel through some particular point. But where? What's the location that robot carries? Where it has to move? Where it has to sit? What operation it has to do? Now, all things that you have to put inside the particular robot. So, here comes with some ideas, some things that we need to know. The first thing is the localization of robot or pose identification of the robot or globalization of the robot. So these things that need to identify first. So it's okay that you have created the robotic program, but Apart from that, we need to look from multiple different angles. What's my position of the current robot which I have created? So to solve that problem, we need to look into two important parts: localization and globalization of it. Now, robot localization. So in the robot, once we are created, navigation is one of the most challenging competencies that required for a mobile robot. Navigation means with travel. We have seen that navigation, it's okay, but success in navigation requires success at four building blocks of the navigation. It has to travel through the particular path. But what we have to consider while writing a program, when you write the program, see in this presentation, two parts I have created. First, when actually code a robot, then what to do, and second part, already coded robots. That is what we call as case studies, use cases. That also we will see. Now, first, perception: the robot must interpret its sensors to exact meaningful data. Which sensor is used for what kind of operation, that we need to know while writing a particular program, the perceptions of it. Second is localization. Robot must define its position in the environment where it is actually placed. Is the surrounding is correct, a surrounding is required to operate the robot in a perfect fashion on. That's what we call localization. Next is cognition. The robots must decide how to act and achieve the goals. What operation do you do now? Robot is present there, but what operation the robot has to do, robot has to perform. Okay. And last is motion control. It must modulate its motor output to achieve the desired trajectory. In what motion you have to perform operations with. It's okay, robot is there, but robots are not always the fastest devices that machine actually performs with, and not motion control. These four parts are there in the navigation system that when the program is created for the robotic, it has to look from that point of view also. Yeah. Now let's see how the localization is done. Basically, we are having a few things like, see here we have the perception like observation that we require, raw sensor data, extracted features there. Any kind of many different sensors are present. That sensors will be taking the data as input. Okay, they'll be taking the data as input, and once the data is taken, then the AI program which are written inside the robot, they are given with certain different kind of conditions. Okay. Conditions, if that condition matches, then accordingly you have to perform the actions. Okay. Like we called estimation of position or updation inside that, or changing the speed, or moving the positions, or sorry, changing the directions, or changing the orientations, like that. That will be depending upon the current location. So from observation that will be taken. Okay. Then when it is matching with the threshold values or match observations are there, based on that we'll perform some operation, like all. Okay. And it will perform the operation repetitively. Now, even by using the position estimate, will identify what exactly the current position is present and where you have to move. In order to do this particular task by the robot, then what actions are expected, that is put inside the program created for the particular robot there. It also contains many more electronic equipment that we have seen in the first session, like encoder to convert that data into the actionable format. Then we require the encoding there. Map, just like a database present, means I want to follow this particular path, so I require a database where the things are present. In all, the localization will be done. Exact location. Even we can make use of GPS also. But in case of GPS, few things are having pros, few things are cons are present there. If one could attach an accurate GPS, global positioning system, sensors to mobile robot, much of the localization problem will be obviated. The GPS would inform the robot of its exact position and orientation, indoors, outdoor, where the location, indoors, outdoor. So that the answer to the question, where am I, would always be immediately available. It has to perform the operation. It has to set its initial position. That GPS will be required. But such sensor is not currently practical. The existing GPS network provides accuracy to within several meters. Exact location is not identified. Several meters are there. Where we are sitting, it will, you just can check on Google Maps also. It shows a circle. Okay, 1 kilometer circle. Not exactly 1 kilometer, but okay. A wide range is shown over there. So GPS network accuracy is not required as per the small robot is expected, okay, which is unacceptable for localizing human scale mobile robots as well as miniature mobile robots such as desk robot or body navigating nano robots. They will not have this particular GPS system implemented perfectly. Furthermore, the GPS technologies cannot function indoors or in obstructed areas, thus limited with their workspaces. Okay. Most of the time, when you create a robot, this part is focused. With the help of GPS, I can locate. But the accuracy which is expected to locate the robot is not yet gained by GPS mechanism here. That's why GPS mechanism is having that drawback, that is what we are having the uh, coarse grain accuracy, fine, but fine grain accuracy is not yet present with the GPS. So there are two methods of navigations are present here when you navigate the particular robot on specific path that we need to follow while writing the program, AI program for the robotics. First is behavior based navigation and second is map based navigation, which we call as a model based navigation also. Okay, so they are followed. Now see, behavior based navigation system, so it's a part of localization itself. Behavior based, so uh, we have two things: input, that is sensors; second is the actuator, which perform actual action performed over there. Now sensors will take the data and all they will perform operation parallelly, like communication, taking the data as input, or discovering the new area, or detecting the goal position, avoiding the obstacle, or performing the right or left kind of operation. So all that operation will be done at the same time parallelly by different areas of program. Maybe we will be implementing the concept of multi processing or multi threading, okay, which uses the concurrency control. If you're knowing concurrency operation in operating system, so same things are involved present over here. Threads or processes, multiple threads are possibly be created by that, all operation done parallelly, and they are combined, collaborated together. That's what called as fusion of all operations are done, and based on that actuator will be given the signal to perform operations with. This called as behavior based navigation, where operations are done parallelly in multi-processing or multi-threading fashion. Not exact parallel is there. Exact parallel is not possible by single program. So you need to embed different program for different applications which are shown over here. Just to that second part, which we call a model-based navigation or map-based navigation, where all the operation that we do in between sensor and actuator, they are connected in a series. Like sensors first, perception, then we go for the building a map, okay, identify the location and then build a map. Just like in previous session I've shown point based operations, they are done over here in the localization part or the map building part. Then we'll plan it, what path to follow, cognition, which path to follow, okay, and then start moving, motion control, okay. The motion control will be done, and at the end the commands will be given to the actuators. So generally if you are to move, so the command will be given to the wheel, so wheel will start moving ahead. That is called as map based navigation. The map is generated, created here in sequence, so map is followed. They all operations inside the model or map based navigations are connected together, dependent on each other. They have to follow in their sequence. That is called as map based navigation, which is used for the navigation operations in the uh, robotics here. Okay, what are the basic pieces that localization contains? So locate it. Okay, localization system contains. So we are having a real world data set database present in our system, and two things are there. We have seen first the gyroscope sensors. Gyroscope sensors used to identify the position, the pose I'm talking about means what pose, not only gyroscope but many things are there, like we'll having the obstacle sensor, gyroscope is the tactile sensors are present, or single IMU is also possible, where all the memes sensors are present within that. We'll check the pose of it. Okay, at what position, horizontal, vertical, or tilt, or any other position which is the robot is now moving, it will be used in prediction of the further pose and map switches are possible with this. Okay, so how this pose is actually maintained? Now, pose maintenance means pose is maintained inside the particular program which is written for the robot there. Let's see. Common general idea and summary I have given here. Given the estimate of where the robot might be is a p dash. Means I want that robot. Current position is present here. I want that robot at some distance place over here. That is distance place is current position is p, and that position is p dash. So to maintain that common basic idea, that is acquire the sensors data first. So sensors, like 5 different kind of sensors I'm having, by gyroscope, by tactile, by your IR infrared sensors. I can just identify what is the current situation of the robot is, current position, current pose that robot carries. We can acquire that, and out of all that will identify the perfect required data for us, that is data extraction that we do after that. Then match the features to the model. Now see, the algorithm which is created for the robot movement or robotic operation, this already fixed the things. So you have to match at what particular point it is the robot can be placed perfectly. Okay, and after that we'll update the pose estimate based on the feature information. What a feature is currently available, these features are there in this pose, I have to move. So what actions are required from this pose to this pose, what actions are required? You can just, okay, if you have done the animation, see, in the animation, this things, this pose maintenance is very playing very important role. That like initially I have this, then I am having this. So means first and second are completely changed. Same object is there, but it is rotated, it is size is changed, it's something like that. Means complete animations are done completely differently. So I want to move this to this. So the command or the actions which are given in between will be identified, and pose will be changed. So your program, your animated program, will be changing the pose, will be changing the direction, will be changing the motion accordingly, that will be identified. So updation of pose estimate will be based on the feature information that we are extracted, and based on that the pose, the position and the pose of the robot will be checked. So when previously it was this, now I want that. So what actions are required that your artificial intelligence program will do? Okay, you might have learned about this kind of algorithms in the previous sessions of artificial intelligence. The same are implemented here in the robot also. Okay, there are some models used in the pose maintenance called as uncertainty model. Actually, a lot many mathematical things are there. I just deleted all of them. Maybe it's difficult to understand. But how exactly the pose maintenance is done? Uncertainty model. So 5 different things I mentioned here: single hypothesis, sum of Gaussians, probability grid, typological graph, and particle base. Everyone contain their own mathematical formulas. With the help of that, that pose is changed. Okay, the graphical representation is shown over here. You can check it out. With the help of that, the pose, uh, proposed pose means expected pose of the robot can be checked there. Now, when actually we are working with that particular pose, some landmark measurement operations are done in the robot. Now, while doing the landmark measurement, some kind of feature extraction is done. Some kind of feature extraction. What that feature extractions are? First is if the landmark is passive or active. Now, see, in previous slide again, previous session again, I was just about told about the point. These point are called the landmarks. Now that landmarks is identified first in the location of them, the shortest path toward the landmark will be found, and then it will be checked that the landmark is passive or active. Sensor must emit energy to sense the landmark. So see, remember, we have seen the passive and active also sensors. The same concept is applicable here also. Then check whether the landmark is natural or artificial. Okay. Then which sensors can detect it? Vision, sonar, radar, tactile, or chemical. Or what are the landmarks geometric properties are present? Whether they are plane, linear, segment, point, diffuse, like all. Or what is the discriminality that landmark is containing? Okay, that's also identified in the landmark measurements. And what kind of landmarks are present? That while identification of the path will be done in this way. So passive landmarks and active landmarks. In case of natural, see, natural landmarks which are passive, just like wall corners, will be detected. Texture patch, okay, or river bends, or the earth surface. All they are passive means they are stationary, they are fixed. Now, what are the active landmarks? Like sun and north stars, magnetic dipoles, pressure gradient, or mineral vent, all they are changing naturally, but they are changing. Okay, means if you want to change the position of the robot according to the surface will not change, or wall corner will not change. They are fixed. But if you want to change the position of the robot according to sun's position, sun is natural but not stationary, it is active. So again, different mechanism is used over here. Now if you go to artificial landmarks, like we are having surveyor's mark, we have manually put the mark, or retro reflector, lighthouse, or trailblaze, or any channel marker like all, or in active chemical marker. Chemical marker means they will change the position as the chemical property changes. Radio beacon or lighthouse, okay, which will be on only on the night, and in day it will be something different. LoRaWAN, GPS, okay, they are artificial but active. They are changing continuously. Based on that landmark, the positioning algorithm of the robot will be decided. So you decide what kind of passive or active, or what kind of artificial or natural landmarks we have. Based on that, the navigation system will work over here. Now, the measuring systems which are used to measure, okay, which are used to measure the idea about the distance, about the motion. So what measuring systems are used here? Like, for example, range to surface fashion corner, that will be identified by using the sonar sensor. Okay, or the bearing, absolute, relative, or differential, that we can identify with the help of the compass sensor. Okay, even direction also we can change. Even we can make use of this vision by using a calibrated cameras that we can find. Or range to point we can identify by using the TYF, RSO or TYF from the RF acoustic beacon, that can also be used. Okay, or range bearing the object, that can be identified by using the radar. Okay, or laser sensors, or the stereo camera, that we can find. Or if you want to find a distance to sea surface or floor, with the help of the pressure sensors, by bathymetry sensors, like all that. So this kind of measurements will be there. At actual, when the industrial robots are created, all that things are considered in manufacturing that kind of the robot. So we will have that particular things present here. Now, when actual robots are built, robots are created, they are manufactured. So few control system we require to operate on that, or to get them operated. Out of that, the most important control system is a servo motor control. Servo motor. Servo motor is a small device that has an output shaft. If you have learned about that again in IoT, it's a part of Internet of Things also. If you have seen, so you might be knowing this already. So servo motor contains a shaft. That shaft can be positioned to specific angular position by sending the servo a coded signal. As long as the coded signal exists on the input line, the servo will maintain the angular position of the shaft. The coded signal changes, angular position of the shaft will change. In practice, servos are used in radio controlled airplanes to position control surfaces like elevators and ruddlers. They are also used in radio control cars, puppets, and of course the robots. See this one. This is the servo motor. Okay, servo motor. Now, in this servo, this is a typical servo motor. Remember, it's not used in industry. This is used for hobbyists only. Those who are interested to learn the robotics, or interested to learn the uh, IoT application, so they can use this one. Okay, Microsoft. This is a shaft present here, and it contains a set of gears presented here. Now, the hardware assembly of servo motor is created like that. That shaft will not complete the rotation. Will not complete the rotation. Remember, we don't require the rotation to complete. We are having many more motors, many more DC motors, which will have a rotational motors there, which will complete rotation, rotors. But here it is not there. It is having a ability, limitation there. It will not complete a rotation. It will have the angles of 90 degree, 180 degree, 270 degree, but 360 degree is not possible by using that. So most of the robotic arms are created with the help of the servo motor here. So these servos are radio controlled to position control surfaces like elevators or rollers they are used. So in many application areas, when it's not required to rotate completely, we require a servo motor to work over there. Okay. These servo motors are extremely useful in robotics. Very, very useful there. The motors are small, and as you can see in picture that they're built in control circuitry and extremely powerful for their sizes. The a standard servo motor, which is name is given here, but I'm using a different micro servo 9G presented here, which is used by a lot many hobbyists who are working in robotics and IoT application there. Okay, a tightly loaded servo therefore doesn't consume much energy. Guts of servo motors are shown in the picture. I'll just show you what guts it contains. In this picture, actually we are having three wires. Okay, where is that? Sorry. Huh. See this one. Three wires are there. Three different color wires are present, and these wires are used to connect specific points in the robots so that robotic arms can be created. See, your arm does not contain the 360-degree movement if you are moving in one direction. So maybe some 180-degree movement are possible for that arm. So to build such kind of the arm, these servo motors will be used in that case. So in that diagram, you can see a set of gears, and you can also see three wires to connect to the outside world. One of the wire is 5 volt, which is supplying the power to it. Second is ground, and the white wire is the control wire where the signals are sent to control to rotate. Actually, where you have to rotate in positive direction, 90-degree, 270-degree, 180-degree, or any other degree. Okay, above 270, it's not possible to rotate that particular motor because the hardware control circuitry is created like that. So how it works? Servo motor is having a control circuit and a pot, potentiometer. That's called a variable resistor that is connected to the output shaft. In that picture, the pot can be seen on the right side of the circuit board. I'll show you. This pot allows the control circuitry to monitor the current angle of the servo motor. If the shaft is at the correct angle, the motor shuts off. See, here it is present below, and with the help of that variable is a potentiometer that we call, and based on the resistance, this angle will change. Okay, angle will change, just like we are having a control for your fan, for your ceiling fan. We are having a button that you have to rotate, and based on that the resistance will change, and as the resistance changes, the speed of fan changes. Okay, using that mechanism, servo motor is also performing the similar operations here. Okay, that allows to monitor the current angle of servo motor. Shaft is at the same angle and motor shuts off. So when actually building, this motors plays very important role to perform the movement in these directions. If the circuit find the angle is not correct, it will turn the motor on the correct direction until the angle is correct. The output shaft of servo motor is capable of traveling somewhat around 180 degrees, usually somewhere in 210-degree range, but it varies by manufacturer. Remember, some motor can vary till 270 degrees also, but general idea is 180 degree. You start from 0, 90, 180. In that angle only they will have a usual direction. Normal servo is to control angular motion between 0 to 180 degrees. So just think of it, most of the time in industry, robots are used to lift something. Okay, so when they're lifting something, hardware will not allow to perform a complete rotation in the lifting. They have to lift till 180 degree only. So there they plays very important role, servo motors. And almost most of the robots which are now available today, they are having a servo motor for the internal operation control. Okay, normal servo is mechanically not capable of turning, and further due to mechanical stop built on the top of the main output gear that's present there. That's what I told. Mechanical stop is present on the main output gear. Above that, it is not possible. Okay, and if you start changing the location physically, it will damage that servo motor over there. See this one. So this is technically I've just shown how the rotations are there. So rotations will be like that. For example, here with 1.50 millisecond, we'll be having a neutral position, the shaft as it is positioned. Okay, When we change, basically to rotate that, we are using methodology called as PWM, pulse width modulation. With the help of pulse width modulation, we provide the frequency ranges. So as you change the frequency ranges, your rotation of the motor will change, and accordingly that the robot will move, or robot will have a control of that particular servo motor in its architecture there. So like 1.5 millisecond will be having a neutral position, 0 1.25 millisecond will be position at 0 degree here, okay, and 1.75 millisecond will be having 180 degree. These values required to change. If these values are changing, accordingly motor will rotate, okay, from 0 till 90, 90 to 180, again from 0 to 180, 0 to 180. In that, this is the angular area where this motor will always rotate. So in the manufacturing of the real robotic application, this motor is used in this way to have the rotation from 0 degrees to 180 degrees here. Okay, remember that. This is how the servo motor actually works. Now let's go for the filtering methods. Filtering methods, when you perform any specific operation with the robots, so we have to focus on the common operation that robot actually does, that is called as filtering. Not all operations are obvious, some operations are obvious. The obvious operation which are done by the robot are stored in a database, and by some mechanism we filter that operation and perform it. So for many problem, estimate is required to each time a new measurement arrives. That is what we do with the help of two methods called as batch processing and the sequential processing. So in batch processing, so batch and sequential, they are the traditional methods actually. From several years in the field of computing, they are followed to perform operations. Batch processing, it requires all the available data to perform the operations. And sequential processing, okay, new data is processed upon arrival. First process, second process, sixth process. You need not to store the complete data set, need not reprocess for all of the data for each new measurement. And it has to assume no out of sequence measurements are there, and will just make use of the sequential methodology in order to identify the most accurate sequential organizations of the results from the particular robot here. So sequential processing and batch processing, these two are used in the recursive filtering. In that, we are having one more. Why it's called recursive? You might be knowing the terminology recursive there. Recursive means inside the processing, for example, sequential. Okay, so inside the sequential, we are creating again a sequential processing. Like that's called a recursive. The same thing inside itself, that is called a recursive. So that processing is used here. In that, there is one more method which is applied. Actually, it's very detailed mathematical model is there. Let's take an overview of it only. A lot many mathematical model, maybe it will be very difficult to understand. I'll just give a small snapshot of all. Recursive Bayes filtering. Bayes filtering. Bayes filtering, you might have heard about one formula or theorem called as Bayesian theorem, Bayesian probability. The formula is to identify the probability of something. Okay, probability of something. So here also, probability of an action to perform by a robot is identified by using the recursive Bayes filtering. Okay, so that formula which are shown over here, they are generally used to perform the operation of filtering of the actions. Okay, one more is that called as a hidden Markov process, Markov modeling that we call Markov filtering. That's also present here. So using the Bayesian probability formula, it is identified that what action to perform, what action to filter and perform over there. So just like that, it is used here by using the recursive Bayesian filtering. So it's a probability which is shown here that will be used to perform the action, filtered action out of it. And then we'll have a prediction. Means what the next step to do? Okay, what's the next step to do? That's what we call a priori algorithm. And if you want to update the step, so we are going to use a posteriori algorithm there. So to do this one, these formulas are used, which uses the system model to predict the forward operations. Okay, what action to do, that will be predicted with the help of this particular formula of a priori state. Okay, which can deform, which can translate, which can spread a state due to the random state. Okay, And using this, we can just predict it. And if you want to update that, a posteriori is used, a priori and a posteriori. So this formula used over here, we just have check this one. Prediction requires the x of k minus 1, and here updation requires x of k. Just like that, we'll start from k minus 1 to k minus 1, we'll have k to k1 to k here. Okay, so which is used to update on prediction, and in light of new data, it tighten the state predictions also. Okay, so that's what the filterings are used, predictions and the updation. Actually, the concept is very detailed, which require the knowledge of the Bayesian statistics as well as the probabilistic modeling also. So based on that, the filtering operations are done over here, recursive filtering. Okay, we already seen the consider localization here. Now let's go for the mobile robot localization. It's a problem of determining the pose of a robot relative to a given map of environment. Okay, location and the finding a path is required there. So two things we have talked about, the localization only, common localizations. Localization actually contains two different parts: local localization and the global localization. In the position tracking, this part we have to remember and know about it. So in position tracking, initial robot pose is known. What is the initial pose that is identified? So when algorithm is written for the robotics, it's identified that what is the first pose that the robot has taken. Okay, the pose uncertainty is approximated by the unimodal distribution, and that uncertainty is local. Here they are using a Gaussian mixture formula to identify the location of it. Gaussian mixture. Okay. So using Gaussian mixture formula, the pose uncertainty will be identified. And in case of global localization, the initial robot pose is unknown. Okay. Initial robot pose is unknown. Either you can use the first operation of localization, local, and second or the global. And in global localization, we cannot assume the boundedness of the pose error. Thus, unimodal probability distribution is inappropriate. Even kidnap robot problem is also there. We will not go for that. Just remember position tracking and the global localization. Even in localization, we'll be having the environment in two different ways, like static environment or the dynamic environment. Static environment is that when robot actually start moving, it is initial force is known, means we already fixed that robot will be in this direction at this place. But in dynamic, objects other than robot, those location or configuration change over the time. Like people will change it, daylight will change it, some movable furniture, door, anything will change that. So how to find a solution onto that? Dynamic entities might be included in the state vector. There's a vector, state vector created, and in that all the dynamic entities are kept already. What are the possibilities there? Just like exception handling mechanism, if you're knowing in programming languages, exception handling mechanism already knows what sort of exceptions are possible in the program. Okay, what sort of exceptions are possible. So based on that, we are going to have a dynamic environment. What are the possibilities included? That possibilities, dynamic entities are included into the state vector, and then sensor data can be filtered so that eliminate the damaging effect of model dynamics. So this state, first state, second state, third, fourth, fifth, out of all state is present, then only proceed further. If that state is not matching in the vector, then don't proceed, because it may be possible that it may damage the census data, it may damage the architecture of the robot also. Like that we need to consider in dynamic environment. Okay, remember it. Okay, so we are having passive and active localization also. One more way. Passive is just like it only having the observations for robot operation, and active means it is actually performing the operation, navigating it, or having a direction to move something in the symmetric corridor or eliminate the ambiguity in that. That's also one of the possible in localization. Even we are having single robot or multi-robot localization also. Okay, one robot's belief can be used as a bias to another robot belief. This is what we call as experience sharing. Two robots are there, so if one robot has observed that hazard, so it can be communicated with second robot also. So second robot will learn and will use that belief, that knowledge from the first robot to avoid any damage or accident in that. That is a single. Actually, again, it's very detailed concept is there, but just remember the overview, what exactly the thing that we have learned. Dynamic and the active, sorry, dynamic and the active, or passive or active, or we are having single or multi robot. this kind of involvements in the localizations are possible. What are the methods that localization will require? So two methods are used. The first is iconic method, and second is a feature based method. In case of iconic method, the it uses the raw sensor data directly, direct as it is. So no filtering is done over there. Directly the raw sensor data is taken, that would match the sensor reading to data fused from the previous sensors, and it uses a lot with current metric map mapping also. In case of feature based method, data which is useful, okay, only that are extracted. Okay, the feature extracted from the sensor data, and extract the corner of the sonar data like occupancy grid, compare how corner move to the next step, like all that also we will do in feature based method. So iconic method, direct data is used, and feature based method, feature extraction is done. But if you compare the speed, iconic method is somewhat faster, okay, because direct data is taken. They are not applying any data analytics methods over there. Directly data is taken. But feature based is now adding their own algorithm, and only useful data is taken out of it. Remember that. And what are the problems that may appear? In case of global position estimation, they figure out where the robot is. We don't know where the robot is started and given a priori map. Okay, prior map is not given. I'll see the sensory map also, how the sensory map can be given. So the problem is this: global position estimation is not, it's very difficult. And local position tracking, to figure out whether the robot is given what to know or where the robot is started. That's things should be available first, and position tracking will be difficult in such cases if not. Now let's go for the mapping. What is robotic mapping? Robotic mapping is a discipline related to the computer vision and cartography. Cartography, so check the locations of it. The goal of the autonomous robot is to able to construct or use a map or a floor plan, means internally what is present at what position, okay, to localize itself. It's recharging based or beacons in it. So robotic mapping is a brand that deals with the study and application of ability to localize itself in a map. So robot is knowing the map, where what is playing. Just remember about it, the person which is not having the eyesight, means he's blind, so he'll remember the things. He will have a plan or map of the respective area in the mind. Accordingly, it process. So robot is not having eyes. Robot is having sensors. Okay, but it will have a map, and that floor plan is present. It will be created by the autonomous robots called as a mapping. What operations are done? Robot has two sources of information. Okay, the idiothetic and the allothetic. Okay, two sources of information. When in motion, robot can use a date reckoning method such as tracking number of revolutions of its wheels. Remember, number of revolutions of the wheels. It has to reach a destination. So it track how many revolutions are taken to reach to that particular point. Okay, this corresponds to idiotic source. Okay, and can give absolute position of the robot and is subject to cumulative error, which can grow quickly. Remember. Now, the method which are used in the mapping, first is the sensory map. Sensory map. In robotic, one often combines external sensory input and the motor kinematics. That SMM is used is a map between the perception system of the robot and the action performed by the robot. The map gives the robot an understanding of how certain motor actions affect the perceived reality by relating the kinematics and dynamics used by the robot to achieve the external sensory inputs. Many different small demonstration also you can see on the YouTube where just check it out there. How robot tracking and mapping is done with the help of sensory map like this. So we have given some location points that it has to travel. Like what are the parts by which the traveling is possible? What are the things are present? Let's like if you are driving a car, and you will not drive the car by hitting directly the trees, or you will not drive the car in the very fast roadways. Already we are having the perfect roads present. We are having the highways, national highways, state highway, district highways, and some local roads are there. Will not go anywhere out of it. We have a destination. We have a destination means we have the cities, we have the villages where you travel through that particular roads. Likewise, the sensory maps are created. Okay, and robot will directly follow the respective path. It will not go out of it. It will not directly change the path out of the sensory map present here. Just like a sensory map I have shown here, The dots are the location points, and the lines are the path which robot will follow. Okay, robot has to follow, and remaining which is empty, they are not used, they are unusable, or they may contain some obstacle present in that particular locations. In this way, these maps are created and robot will follow that path. In on IEEE also, you can find many different research papers which are working on creation of sensory maps. There are many ways are present which are used to create these sensory maps. Somewhere there are sensorial maps also, but the common idea behind creating this sensory map is common there. Now, just like that, we have a topological maps also to set the maps the uh, for particular robots here. Topological map is a set of places and edges that links them. Okay, direct edges are there. They don't have the curves, something like that. So they will have the places and the edges. What is place? Place is a decision point among the edges. Okay, it has a local topology. Okay, and it has a local geometry also, directions of edges there. And what is edge? Edge is a link that links two places. Okay, it has a control law and travel along it. That is a topological map. See this. A small scanned map of a robot is given here. Okay, here we can see E1, E2, E3, E4, something like that. Okay, these are the edges. Okay, E1, E2, E3. Okay, and P1, P2, P3, P4, P, like these are the places. Okay, so edges and places. Edges is the actual path, highways, and P1, P2, P3, they are the cities. Okay, villages which are located, which are situated on the particular path. Okay, so in this way, topological maps are created, just like a map that we follow, Google map that we have. Here we have robot follow the topological map. Topological maps are used for the mapping of the path by the robots. Okay, like that. Check this. This is what really maps. This is a rough idea created for the maps. You can check it out. Here some obstacles are present in between. Okay, you have to follow the edges. And if you go to topology, maps is created like that. See this. So example, robot has to follow from here. Here, from here to here, from the source and destination. Okay, so they will follow the shortest path out of it, like following from here like this, will go and reach here. It will not grow from this. I will have possibility from traveling from here also, from here also. So can check the distance of them, and after that topological maps will be created in this way. So topological maps are the local perceptual maps of place with neighborhoods and small scale place spaces possible. You can build a local topological description of complete qualitative structure of each place of the neighborhood there, and build a global topological map abductively using some algorithms there which are used here to build a topological maps also. Now let's come to the main part of this session, that is the robots in practice. Means the robot which are created at actual by implementing all of these ideas together. Okay, real world situation when they are created. So some of the examples shown over here: delivery robots, intelligent vehicles, they are also robots, mining automation, mining robots, space robots, then autonomous aircrafts. Okay, so like non-pilot aircrafts are there, agriculture robotics or forestry robotics, domestic robots. Let's go one by one. Delivery robots. See, and check this one of the robot which is delivering the product, anything, any kind of good from one place to the another place. Okay, he knows the path, and it is created by using all the principles of robotics that we have seen. All many complexity, many intelligent system algorithms, AI algorithms are implemented inside. Even it may need machine learning algorithms also somewhere, and that will improve, that will help us improve the accuracy of this particular robots also, delivery robots. See that. A company is there, DoorDash, that begin using food delivery robot to drop off the food orders. The DoorDash robot can carry 22 lbs of food. While it makes delivery, the robot's compartment is locked so that no one can steal the food or tamper with it. That's important to know. Okay. And when the service robot arrives at a destination, DoorDash sends a text message with a link. The recipient clicks on the link to unlock the food delivery robot. Okay, to unlock that, so this is a home. Security mechanisms also added there. Still, it is not yet implemented completely. Might have learned or heard about many companies like Zomato or Uber Eats or Swiggy. So they are having that delivery within a specific region. It's not like Amazon or Flipkart. We are purchasing somewhere and just having a delivery from different cities. The delivery within a same city are required. So we'll be making use of such delivery robots, and delivery robots will be delivering the particular good at specific location. And here, the principles of robotics will be perfectly applied or required to create a robustness of to have a robustness in these particular robots. Second, intelligent vehicles. Now, intelligent vehicle, they connects or they contains electronic, electromechanical, electromagnetic devices, usually silicon micro machine components operating in conjunction with computer control devices, radio transceivers to provide precision repeatability functions such as robotic artificial intelligence systems, emergency warning, validation, performance, like many things are there. Intelligent. Intelligence means they are having ability to decide by themselves, like unmanned or non-driver car. Okay, auto driving car. Like it's one of the example of intelligent vehicle. Or vehicle is having ability to say tell its text to the driver. That's what intelligent vehicles are. Let's consider an autonomous car. It's a vehicle capable of sensing its environment and operating without human involvement in that. Human passenger is not required to take control of vehicle at any time, nor the human passenger is required to present in the vehicle at all. The car can go anywhere in traditional car goes and do anything, everything that experienced human driver does. Okay. Now, Society of Automotive Engineers currently defines 6 levels of driving automation ranging from 0 to 5. Fully manual 0 and 5 is fully automatic. These levels have been adopted by US Department of Transportation already, and many companies have given the license to operate the autonomous cars. Also in India, it's not yet done completely, but many companies like Nvidia, or you might be knowing Tesla. So these two companies are working on these autonomous cars, which are robotic counterparts of already used cars. Already we are having the manually driven cars there. They are given almost all applications, all the human applications autonomously. Intelligence is given, and lot many sensors are present. Again, you can go to YouTube to check all of these cars. Tesla is working completely on development of a fully automated car. This development is not yet completed, but they're working on that. Many cars are now available in the market also, but still the process is going on. Even in some of the nations in the Europe, the what we call Uber actually using such kind of the cars for their internal city driving there. Okay, just autonomous cars are okay. So levels of driving automation, that 6 that we have just shown, like 0 is no automation, 1 is driver assistance, second is partial automation, third is conditional automation, fourth is high automation, and fifth is full automation. Like that is used. Okay, in that 5 stages which are given by United States in not United States actually SAE has provided that. Okay, why to use this? Traffic congestion can be reduced. You can cut the transportation cost also, improve walkability, livability, free up the parking spaces, lots, and reduce the CO2 emissions also by 80% worldwide. Then third is mining automation. Automated mining involves removal of human labor from the mining process. Okay, the mining industry is the transition toward the automation. It can still require large number of human capital, particularly in development of world where labor costs are low. So there is a less incentive for increasing efficiency. So two types of automated mining process, like software automation, that we can have process automation and software automation. Okay, so they are used in mining also. So mining industry requires it huge number of, because it's very dangerous to go to a particular place. Okay, most of the time, sometimes mishappens are done or the accident happens in such kind of places. So we'll be having a human loss. Okay, So that can be reduced with the help of the robotic counterparts created here. Then space robotics. Obviously today whatever the space observatories are there, rovers are put or they are launched by different space research agencies, they are controlled autonomously by artificial intelligence and the robotics there. Okay, space robotics. So there are many uses robots in space spacecraft that explore the world like moon or Mars. Robots are included in the planetary robotics. Planetary robotics generally we call it as. These include orbiter, lander, rover to explore other planets and asteroids. Okay. The example is orbital robotics. This tracks support and orbiter servicing and maintenance activities there. Okay. So also space station arm can move different parts of the station. It moves along with the outside of the station like an inch arm attached at the end of the time. Then next is autonomous aircrafts. Check this. Autonomous aircraft. So two kind of aircrafts we have. General the human carrying aircrafts plus we'll be having the drones which are used for the transport or deliveries also through air, that autonomous aircraft which are not having any control from the human being. Okay, so when aircraft is still on the ground, the pilot adds the input of flight plan to flight management system in commercial aircraft. It can switch self-driven mode few minutes after takeoff. Autopilot can manage flying until few minutes before landing when pilot switches back to its own driving. So many aircrafts now, flying vehicles now getting autonomously driven by a computer program of robotics here. Okay, if something goes wrong during the process, like risky situations of diversion, turbulence of emergency scenarios, pilots can use cockpit to manage that. That all means both semi autonomy is present now still in different kind of the aircraft. Then in case of agriculture, so deployed for agriculture purposes, basically main area is for harvesting. Actually, let's see that this one, food picking robots, driverless tractors, sprayers, ship sharing robots can be used. Okay, or they can be used for horticulture tasks also, pruning, weeding, spraying, monitoring, or we'll be having livestock application, livestock robotics like automatic milking, washing, or castrating. That's also possible. Or they will be used for agriculture industry, including higher quality of fresh products, lower production costs. Many everywhere the robotics are possible there. See this one, automated harvesting robot, a simple robot which is created by uh, as a one of the project in the European countries. And maybe in India also many students are creating such kind of the robots which will help the farmers to reduce their efforts in the farm. Forestry robots. Okay, they are used to cut the forest most of the time, directly control the movement of head. Okay, so they also can be used to maintain the forest velocity. Okay, that's also possible. Forestry robots. Or the last one, that is a domestic robot. Domestic robot is a type of service robot and autonomous robot that primarily used for household chores, but may also be used for education, entertainment, and therapies. Thus far, there are only few limited models, although speculators such as Bill Gates have suggested that they could become more common in future. Okay. So while you see more domestic robots are simplistic, some of the connected with Wi-Fi home network or smart environments and are autonomous to high degree. See, there were an estimated 16.6 million service robots in 2018, and now today, if you see the today's scenario, 2020, the number of robots which are now available are 24.1 million service robots are there. See how they can help us, how the domestic robots can help us in our day-to-day activities. Apart from that, many more robots are there. Even some robots are, see, it's cleaning kind of things, or they are serving you the food, or they can cook the food for you, like that's also possible. They are actually used to minimize the efforts of human by employing the artificial intelligence algorithms and the machine learning systems in that. Very small different kind of robots are present that we use in day-to-day life, just called as the humanoid robots, and they are used to perform the domestic robotic operations here in this particular way. Okay, so this is how the robotics are used in day-to-day life. Many things are that we have learned. I have taken the very fast overview of many different topics. Detailing is also there. Just can try by yourself. But if you have any questions or doubts regarding this session, so you ask, can ask.